Good morning to everyone. Please start taking your seats.
running around, throwing that dirt all on my name. 'Cause you knew that I knew that I knew that I'd call you up. You've been going around every party in LA. 'Cause you knew that I knew that I knew that I'd be at one. Oh, I know that dress is karma, perfume regret. You got me thinking about when you were mine. Oh, and now I'm all up on you, what you expect. But you're not coming home with me tonight. You just want attention, you don't want my heart. Baby, you just hate the thought of me with someone new. Yeah, you just want attention, I knew from the start. You're just making sure I'm never getting over you. You've been running around, throwing that dirt all on my name. 'Cause you knew that I knew that I knew that I'd call you up. Baby, now that we're right here standing face to face, you already know that you won. Oh, I know that dress is karma, you regret. You got me thinking about when you were mine. You got me thinking about when you were mine. And now I'm all up on what you expect. But you're not coming home with me tonight. You just want attention, you don't want my heart. Baby, you just hate the thought of me with someone new. Yeah, you just want attention, I knew from the start. You're just making sure I'm never getting over you. What are you doing to me? What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing to me? What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing to me? What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing to me? What are you doing? I know that dress is karma, perfume regret. You got me thinking about when you were mine. And now I'm all up on you, what you expect. But you're not coming home with me tonight. You just want attention, you don't want my heart. Maybe you just hate the thought of me with someone new. Yeah, you just want attention, I knew from the start. You're just making sure I'm never getting over you. Over you. What are you doing to me? What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing to me? What are you doing? Yeah, you just want attention, I knew from the start. You're just making sure I'm never getting over you.
I've been reading books of old, the legends and the myths, Achilles and his gold, Hercules and his gifts, and Spider-Man's control, and Batman with his fist. And clearly I don't see myself upon that list. But she said, where'd you wanna go? How much you wanna risk? I'm not looking for somebody with some superhuman gifts, some superhero, some fairy tale bliss, just something I can turn to, somebody I can kiss. I want something just like this. Oh, I want something just like this. Oh, I want something just like this.
compañeras y compañeros, amigas y amigos.
Comrades, friends,
Hoy es un día muy importante.
today is a very special day. It is the second day of the Socialist Party Congress in Málaga, an important day for Spain, for Europe, and for all of us, for the socialist family. It is also an important day after the 23rd of July of 2023, an important day for Spain, for Europe, and for European socialism. What happened in Spain on the 23rd of July is that the idea of a Spain and a Europe that are progressive, that are open, that are feminist, that are democratic, has won. This idea has won in the face of others. Thank you, Pedro Sanchez, for making this a reality.
So welcome to the Congress of the Party of European Socialists. Last night we elected the president of our party, the former Prime Minister of Sweden, Stefan Löfven. Together with Stefan, the presidency has elected a leadership team. And what I would like to do now is to introduce to all of you our new leadership team for this new mandate. So I would like to have here on stage with me the President Stefan Löfven, the First Vice President Irache Garcia, the Executive Vice President Caterina Barley, the Executive Vice President Francisco André, the Vice President Tania Fayon, Vice President Victor Negrescu, Vice President Kati Piri, Vice President Andrei Sienia, Vice President Radmila Shekerinska, the Treasurer Caroline Jeunesse, the Deputy Secretary General Yonek Pollet, the Deputy Secretary General Sar van Buren, and the Deputy Secretary General Thomas Vaupel. And this is for the new leadership. But before moving on towards the future, we have to do a little moment looking just in the very recent past. As a new Secretary General, it is a real pleasure to invite on stage the just former Secretary General, Achim Post. I will say just a few words about Achim, and then also Stefan will. Really one sentence. It's very rare to find a team leader that is also a very good team player. And I think that Achim Post, in all these years, have been this for all of us at PES, and I believe in the SPD, and I believe for the whole European Socialist family. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your dedication. Thank you for your commitment. Vielen Dank. Du bist ein Genossen. Wunderbar.
Yes, today, friends, we are thanking really heartily former Secretary General Achim Post. You were elected the first time 2012. But this is a man with an experience far beyond that, far before that also, with so many different positions in the SPD and in the Bundestag. This is a man that I've become a close friend with during the years. and a man with his feet on the ground, very ideological, stable, but also an extremely pragmatic person. Also a good man to be with. It's nice to be with Achim. After today, I think we'll have a beer together. And I believe everybody knows that Achim also a great soccer fan. And when I was playing football, I had number 11. I was a left winger. Achim says that the most important number on soccer is number 6. Number 6 is a midfielder. And this is a true midfielder, hard-working midfielder. Thank you, Achim, for everything you have done. There you go.
So is this working? So, dear comrades, it's very simple. I'm still around. I will fight with you to win the European elections. Thank you, Pedro and Psoe. Thank you, PES and Stefan. Thank you, SPD and Olaf and Lars. Thanks a lot.
Good morning, Congress. I'm pleased to moderate the first conversation of today. We're here in Málaga to celebrate our victories. Again, congratulations, Presidente. But we're not only strong in Spain, we are leading across Europe. And our first speaker today is one of the central voices for our political family. Someone who has shown bold leadership over the past years, someone who has taken tough decisions and shown leadership when it was needed. So please, Congress, give a warm applause for the Chancellor of Germany, Olaf Scholz. Good morning. Hi, Olaf. So, good morning. Thank you. Chancellor. Last year, you delivered a powerful speech, internationally renowned even, when you spoke about the Zeitenwende. So what does the Zeitenwende mean in Europe for you, in your view, in the international side?
Thank you for your question, and I think we all know what Zeitenwende is. It is the coming back of imperialism, and this is what was the decision of Putin to try to conquer the territory of his neighbor, the Ukraine. And we have to understand that this changed the peace order of Europe, the security order, a lot. We agreed for many decades that changing borders by force should not be part of the reality of Europe anymore. And with the aggression against Ukraine, the Russian leader decided to change this agreement to fight against another country and just to try to get its territory to be Russian. And we cannot accept this, and we have to react to this Zeitenwende, and that means supporting Ukraine in defending their own country. Putin must not win. And it also means clearly that we all have to work intensely to stabilize our way of defending the territory of our countries and of NATO. And doing so, we took a lot of very tough decisions, spending more for defense, but increasing our cooperation. And also, I think this is part of it, reaching out to the Global South, working hardly to make it happen that we have good partnerships with many of the upcoming nations of the world, understanding that we are willing to cooperate with them, understanding their interest, being a good partner for them now, at this time where it is so necessary to work for a world where peace is more relevant than the ideas of war, which is the idea of the Russian leader.
And you gave another speech last year in Prague about the future of Europe, and you emphasized the need of European reforms, also in the parallel to the enlargement process. Can you tell us a little bit about what priorities the Social Democrats should have in this process?
The European Union is important for all of us, and it is necessary that we are the political leaders, the party that is working for a better Europe. We need it in a world of, I think, in the midst of the century, 10 billion people. We only will be relevant if we are a geopolitical union that is able to solve its problems, but is also able to be a strong partner to the rest of the world. And doing so, we have to work for organizing the necessary reforms for being able to take decisions. This is about the question whether we can have qualified majority decisions, for instance, in foreign policy, or when it is coming to taxes. I think this would be a step mostly needed for making the European Union stronger. But it is also important that we stick to what we said to others, especially the Western Balkan countries, which got the promise to be part of the European Union 20 years ago. It is now 20 years that in Thessaloniki this was said. And this is why we have to work intensely to make it happen now very soon. And this means that we have to work to solve problems that are between some of these nations, but also, and for making peace and stability something that works, but also supporting all in doing the necessary reforms for then getting into the European Union. And this is the same with Moldova, the same with Ukraine, and I think also with Georgia, that we are partners to them, that we make it feasible for them to take the decisions to better their countries, to organize the reforms, and then join our strong European family. I think we have a good chance that this will work if we do our task and if we support those who need support for doing so. And if we are absolutely clear, it is about our regulations, it's about the things that are important for us, the rule of law, democracy, social market economy, things like this. And this is what we have to reach in all these countries, but it is the European perspective that we are united in this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chancellor. And now I would like to call on stage Rosa, another moderator from yesterday too. Welcome, Rosa.
Muy buenos días. Good morning, Prime Minister. Buenos días, queridísimo presidente.
Good morning, dear President.
Muy buenos días.
Good morning, dear colleagues who are with us this morning in this Congress. It's a true pleasure to be able to moderate the next session. Now we're going to look at Spain, but with a very clear view, a European lens. Our political family, dear colleagues, is working every day for a fairer Europe, a more coherent Europe, a Europe which is more social, but also a more feminist Europe. This is why it is an honor to have with us today the woman who leads the fight for feminist values at the EU. Let's welcome Irache Garcia, who is head of the group in the European Parliament. Thank you so much, Irache. It's a pleasure having you with us today this morning. My first question to you is related to the work you do every day at the Parliament. So my question is the following.
In the European Parliament, since 2019, what have been the main progressive achievements in the Parliament? Thank you.
Thank you, Rosa. Thank you, all of you, dear President, dear Prime Minister, dear Commissioners, members of the Spanish government, dear colleagues. We can be very proud. We can be very proud for everything that our political family could achieve during the last difficult times, during the last year at the European level. We did it. We did it because we were united. We did it because we are stronger. We did it because the Social Democrats defend the same values that the European Union: social justice, equality, solidarity. And really, today we can say that all big transformation that during the last time could be possible at the European level was possible for our political family, was possible for all members of the European Parliament from the S&D Group. I want to thank all your work. We did it between our members of the S&D Group, with our commissioners and with our Prime Minister. Really, it was essential to defend that other Europe is possible. It's possible a greener Europe. It's possible a justice social in Europe. It's possible a feminist Europe where the more vulnerable people will be defended for people like us in the European institutions. This big transformation, the green transition, the social pillar, all rule of law transformations was leading by our political family. And we have to be proud, and we have to explain our citizens that it's possible, and they can trust on us to do best future for the next time. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Irache. Together with the great challenges that you faced in these past few years, there is one that we are living right now in the past few months, most noticeably in Spain. We need to face the extreme right, which we see very clearly now. This is why it is more important than ever to defend our progressive values. So what is your view of Europe for the next mandate? If we want to defend a better Europe, a Europe that is closer to citizens, a Europe that truly responds to the needs of those who need it the most, it is necessary to be very clear that social democracy must put an end to the alliance between the right and the extreme right. Today, populism and the extreme right in Europe are a true peril. They are a danger because they want to attack the main values of the European Union. And they made us believe that that was not possible. They made us believe that social democracy could not be an alternative. And here we are in Málaga, in Andalusia, Spain, with our dear president, Pedro Sánchez, who has proven that it is possible to stop the wave of populism and extreme right in Europe and in Spain. Because we will not allow to go backward in all the great victories of the EU. And today, European conservatives must choose in what place of history and of the future of Europe they want to be. We, Social Democrats, we know very well where we stand, where we have always been, defending the values of Europe, defending citizens, defending the most vulnerable. We know where we stand. And they will have to decide. They will have to decide if they want to continue to build with traditional alliances, of course with differences in our ideologies, but always sharing European values, or if they want to create alliances with a right wing whose only purpose is to destroy Europe. This is why we have to work very hard. We have very important months ahead, and we will be talking about people's problems, about what truly matters to people, of how we improve the lives of people. That's why we're in politics. We're going to talk about increasing pensions. We're going to talk about favoring the access of young people to housing. We'll talk about how we fight against the greatest problem in the EU, which is gender violence. We will defend the most vulnerable and minorities, and we'll do it as we always have, feeling proud of being Social Democrats, because that means that we are champions of the European project. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias, Irache.
Well, thank you very much, Irache.
And to introduce him, I call on stage Stéphane Le Foll. Yes.
So, dear friends, no, don't applaud me. You will applaud another guy just in a few minutes for some words. We are here to show that our family, the PES family, can win. We are here to show that we can beat the far right, that we can beat populism. We are here to show that we are the progressive force, political force in Europe that can deliver solutions to improve citizens' lives. Now, there is no better place to do that, and I think there's no better person to symbolize that fight and that success than another close friend of mine, Pedro Sanchez. We've had the pleasure of working together many years. So I want you to welcome on stage the man who did it, Pedro Sanchez.
Muchas gracias.
Comrades, thank you very much. Dear friends, thank you. Thank you, my dear friends. Welcome to the wonderful city of Málaga in Andalusia. Welcome to Spain. Thank you very much for welcoming us and for being present here today at the Congress of the Socialist Family in Spain. Allow me to start my speech by extending greetings in the name of the European Socialist Family to a dear friend of ours, Antonio Costa. Our comrades in Portugal can count on the Spanish Socialist Party in order to win the elections in March 2024.
So, dear comrades, I think you have already heard it through the media, but let me confirm it to you loud and clear here in Málaga right now. Spain will once again have a progressive coalition government for the next 4 years. And the government will be headed by the Spanish Socialist Workers' Party. Sí, amigos y amigas.
Indeed, my dear friends, Spain will have 4 more years of progressive governments with progressive policies, social stability, and well-being.
Gracias.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you very much.
Porque justo eso.
I want to thank you because this is what the Spanish citizens had decided on the 23rd of July. I want to share my joy with all of you, my dear comrades and friends from the European family. This success is not just the success of the Spanish socialist family, it is a true win for our European family.
On July 23, as Stefan has said, we stopped the reactionary wave in Spain. And yes, on June 9, we will stop the reactionary wave throughout Europe by winning the elections to the European Parliament. Mirad, en la noche voy a contaros una anécdota personal.
I'd also like to tell you a personal anecdote. On the evening of the general elections, we had many colleagues, Chancellor Scholz, Mr. Leuven, our dear comrade Stefan, as well as many other friends, were in contact with us. And many of you sent us messages to share your joy. And I must say that I truly felt supported. I felt joy in that socialist brotherhood. You could sense the true win that we had obtained in Spain. And I remembered Olof Palme in Sweden and the ways in which he was able to obtain funds and donations in the midst of the Franco dictatorship. And I remember the support that we got in Brussels and in Bonn against the executions of the Franco dictatorship in Spain. Spain was able to cross the doors of freedom, and it was thanks to the other progressive leaders in the European continent that made this fight theirs as well. It became their struggle, their success as well. And I don't want to mention this just by sheer coincidence, because as Irache very well said, the most nostalgic extreme right that is now expressing a lot of nostalgia towards this dark past is also showing many symbols of this dark past. And we see the echoes of a traditional right that is complicit with these ideals and that has a lot of content related to the extreme right. A right wing that has not been able to stop the extreme right. I want to ask for more sensibleness on behalf of the Spanish Popular Party, and I believe that they need to accept the results of the polls and the legitimacy that we have with the government that we are about to create, and for them to abandon that reactionary path that they have embarked themselves upon. Because with this motto, Spanish citizens told us on the 23rd of July that Spain can only be governed if political pluralism of the country is recognized. The Popular Party can only agree with one political force, and it is the extreme right, Vox, whereas the Spanish Socialist Party is able to reach agreements with all other forces except from one, Vox. So much so that the new government will have the support of 170 seats. All of them, my dear friends, are legitimate representatives of the popular will. And with this will to reach agreements with all of you, I will continue being committed to Spanish society. We will govern for all Spaniards. 4 more years of progressive policies of coexistence and social stability.
Dear friends, Europe is also built from memory, and when we look back, it is good to learn from the success, such as the forging of the European ideal. But more important is to learn from mistakes. And this continent knows from its own experience that when an agreement is made with the far right, a door opens that later becomes almost impossible to close. Lo hemos visto aquí en España.
We saw it in Spain. After the elections of the 28th of May, we had elections that served as a testing ground for the extreme rights. We see the far right in 5 autonomous communities. Tens of town halls in the country, and this is affecting the lives of many citizens. The extreme right has also gained ground in institutions, and it has been able to convert them into platforms to echo their ideals. We have been witness to this. Their policies are setbacks in the rights of women, backlash against LGBTQI communities, against climate change, against labor rights, against culture even. They're taking us to the darkest of times, which are the times to which they belong. It is worth having progressive policies for the next 4 years. After those elections of the 28th of May, they were the back door to reactionary governments with Vox. And they thought this would be a triumphant guarantee. They thought this would be their victory. They were already dividing ministries. They underestimated the Spanish PSOE once again. They were so convinced that they were going to win, they never thought they would fail.
Going back, and yes to moving forward. Spain said no to the past and yes to the future. Spain said no to darkness and going backwards, and yes to move forward 4 more years of hope and progress. Así que triunfó.
This is why democratic responsibility won. Coexistence, democracy, and trust in those that represented us. Conspiracy theories were gaining grounds, but progress was able to win. On that day, my dear friends, Spain witnessed yet another episode of global ideologies that is now repeating itself. A confrontation between 2 different ways of conceiving the world, forces that banalize just causes, such as equality between men and women. This goes beyond ideological differences because it is at the very core of human rights. We need to look towards the future with greater ambition. Over the past decade, the electoral support in the hands of the right has doubled. We see that these parties are now part of 5 national governments and hundreds of regional and municipal governments throughout the EU, and the pattern is always the same. The traditional right embraces the discourse and the policies of the extreme right. And the problem is not one right wing taking the powers of another different or more extreme right wing. I believe that there are serious problems inside the rights throughout Europe. There was a risk of Spain falling onto this on the 24th of July. We're a symbol for the EU. We have conquered many social rights, many liberties, and it was here that reactionary fights could gain ground. Luckily for Spain, they failed on the 23rd of July. We were able to contain them. We were a buffer for this reactionary wave. We hope to repeat this, not to have to repeat the same situation in the European elections. We know what kind of Europe we want. A Europe based on European values that makes democracy an opportunity in order to advance, to go against negationism, climate denial, a Europe that embraces the rights of women, the feminist cause, and a Europe that is in favor of sexual and reproductive rights for Europe, a Europe that protects workers in the face of artificial intelligence, health crises such as COVID-19, a Europe that serves its citizens, that serves its majority. Undoubtedly, my friends, we need a Europe that is a beacon of hope, of progress, of human rights for the world. Not a Europe that is in the hands of its own decadence. This is what we want to reach in the next European elections. Do we want a beacon of hope? Do we want to be an inspirational model for Europe? Do we want to construct prosperity? We need these examples now more than ever throughout the EU.
Socialists have been architects of that social, open and supportive Europe. We put all our intelligence, we put all our minds at the service of a united Europe. Now, dear comrades, it is not just about putting our mind, it is about putting our hearts at the service of the European ideal. Because there is no one else willing to do it in this decisive hour. It is our duty to raise that blue banner as the homeland of reason, science, culture, human rights, and brotherhood of the people in this continent. The French writer Albert Camus said once, "My generation learned that you can be right and be defeated. Now, it is not enough to be right. We have to win. We have to win. And we have to win. We have to win not for us, who have lived this united and peaceful Europe, but for our children, for the future generations. That is why I'm asking you to be more than ever what we have always been, humanists, internationalists, and democrats. That is the meaning of being socialist. Y ese es el camino, compañeros y compañeras.
This is the path to follow for the socialists in the European continent. You can count on Spain for this task. We will be feminists, we'll defend the environment, we will raise the flag of Europe, hand in hand with other progressive governments in Europe. We will continue to advance, to always advance towards a Europe that is more social, that is greener, that dares to compete, a Europe that is loyal to its social model, a Europe that is able to re-industrialize, to strengthen its capacities, and that does not shy away from power and competition. Nobody ever said that in order to lead, we need to make financial cuts or to take steps backward. This is what justified many setbacks in the past and that weakens the European project. Comrades, I think that we've been able to show that we can create employment without cutting on labor rights, without undermining our rights, without undermining the working class. We've been able to raise minimum salaries without sacrificing the economy. We've given a liberal response because Spain is growing and reducing its public debt at the same time as it has more work opportunities, education, as we carry out new financial projections and control on inflation. We have 20 million people working, millions of women that are not part of the labor market. We've been able to reduce the gender pay gap and labor precariousness over the past few years. Undoubtedly, Spain is advancing steadily and firmly, and it will do so in the next few years with the Progressive Coalition Agreement. This agreement will lead us towards the full employment conditions, greater collaboration with countries in our surrounding, an agreement to strengthen decent housing, one of the main problems that the youth is facing at this time, an agreement in order to fight against climate emergency, converting it into an opportunity to advance towards a green and digital economy, an agreement to strengthen the territorial diversity in Spain, an agreement to reinforce coexistence, making Spain what it truly is, a world reference center in feminism. Colleagues, comrades, and friends, with this, I'd like to conclude. And I'd like to conclude with a reflection to our guests, because the PSOE knows this very well, because they live this in their own shoes, but many don't know of our most recent history. Spain is a formidable country. Málaga is a wonderful city, but I started my speech with a reminder, remembering the dictatorship and the lack of liberties that we had under the Franco dictatorship. I would like to remind you that our country did not recognize until 1974 the rights that women had to have property if it wasn't with the approval of a man. This is very recent times. In these times in Spain, women were not owners of their sexual liberties and their bodies. We were the last to legalize divorce. Abortion was not legal until the 70s, after the approval of the Constitution. School leaves reached 70%. A very low proportion of the population had secondary studies. We are now a reference for women and for the LGBTQI communities. We have been able to improve in terms of their rights and their skills. We are leading in terms of fossil fuels, but also renewable energies. We have an extraordinary health service, public health services, which have enabled us to increase our life expectancy. We wanted to reach the hearts of Europe, the hearts of our rights and liberties. If Spain has now become a reference in terms of human rights, it is to be recognized to all Spaniards, because it is our citizenship that defended democracy. Our citizenship decided to advance and to defend democracy so that it wouldn't be a slave to its past. Today is the 11th of November, and in many countries of the world, they remember the end of the World War, a conflict that devastated our whole continent, a barbaric war, where socialists that have been silenced decided to raise their voice. And that now very far-reaching war brought a new world order in order to avoid this great tragedy. And I say this, I like to refer to this because the war in Ukraine reminds us of that scourge and that great tragedy. A conflict in which the civil population requires more protection now that we are set on the path for peace. And it's the reason why, dear friends, we condemn Hamas terrorism. We demand the release of hostages, humanitarian breaks and pauses, and the recognition of a Palestinian state with a two-state solution, both states coexisting. Now more than ever, we need to demand and defend internationalism as the source of the democracy. The value of the European project is a beacon of hope in a world that is facing backlash. We need to face a clear choice. We advance or we go backwards. Comrades, we, the European socialists, will guarantee progress. Let's take on this mission with trust in our principles as socialists, but also as social democrats. Thank you very much.
And from one great victory, we move to our next hope. The next speaker, you know him very well, is a man who has shown leadership with the European Green Deal, making Europe more social and more green. Now, this man is putting all his efforts to take the Netherlands to a different track, to change the society into a more fair and sustainable one, and to build back trust with respect for all. He has been traveling all across the Netherlands to listen and to speak to the people. And we are very pleased that he took the time to have his flash visit with all our leaders of the European Socialist and Progressive parties, because he knows how essential the European cooperation is to Europe and also to the Netherlands. Please welcome Frans Timmermans.
Buenos días, compañeras, compañeros.
Good day, colleagues.
I don't know about you, but I feel so inspired by Pedro's speech. And after having listened to Pedro, I have to say, there is nothing we cannot do. There is no goal we cannot achieve. There is no victory we cannot win. We will follow his lead in defining what is necessary for Europe, but most of all, we will follow his lead in defining our values, in fighting for those values, in showing to Europeans that we have their backs. And I think in this day and age, with so many insecurities, global insecurities, local insecurities, it is very easy for people to get lost in those insecurities, to only think about tomorrow and their own problems. But there is an incredible pool of solidarity available to people in all of our societies. It is our task to wake up that pool of solidarity and to put it to good use for the whole of society. What we have seen, and Pedro has described it so well, that for some people, their insecurities make them vulnerable for the call of the extreme right. The extreme right pretending they have all the solutions as long as they can find the scapegoats they can blame for things not working well. And wherever we see in Europe the extreme right becoming part of the government or shadowing a government, such as in Sweden and in Finland, we very quickly see that they gobble up the center-right. They gobble up the center-right, and the center-right becomes totally infected, as Pedro said, by the extreme right. Look at what happened to this grand old party, the Republicans in the United States. They were gobbled up by the extremists. And this is happening everywhere. So the thought in the center-right, we can encapsulate the extreme right and then neutralize them, has been false and has not worked anywhere in any country where it has been tried. And we will never ever, under any condition, form governments with the extreme right. This is not acceptable under any condition. And I have to say that I believe in what Elie Wiesel once said, that the opposite of love is not hate, but indifference. And what threatens our societies today is the surge of indifference. Because those who propagate hate, they're always the minority. But they can become successful if the majority remains indifferent to our plights. And today, as a feminist, I say to the women in Europe, we will never be indifferent when they try to take away your rights. We will be next to you, we will be in alliance with you, because we know that the only way we can have successful feminist policies if there is an alliance between women and men who understand that we need equality. We also know that we need to fight for the position of peoples of the LGBTIQ community because they are under pressure, and I really want to assert and to signal the plight of the trans people in Europe who are so much under pressure. We tell them, we see you, we hold your hands, we're next to you, and we will protect you at any cost. This is our duty. The Green Deal was mentioned several times. And let me just say what the essence of the Green Deal is. The essence of the Green Deal is that we organize Europe's future in such a way that our continent becomes sustainable, but especially becomes more just. The Green Deal is a machine to create the jobs of the future, is a machine to give job security to people who today are not sure they will have a job in the future, is a machine to say to future generations, we're not only thinking about ourselves, we want to be good ancestors. We want to leave you a planet that is livable, a planet with decent jobs, a planet where Europe is still the place all the world wants to see and come. This is our duty, our holy duty. In 150 years of socialism, the core issue for us has always been all forms of emancipation. How do we draw people out of poverty? How do we give people the prospect of better lives? And today, my friends, this is as necessary as ever, because many people in Europe fear the future, and people who fear the future turn to solutions that will not work. Our task is to take away the fear for the future by simply showing that if we have an energy transition, we will make sure that the people who can't afford to be part of it will be supported in making that energy transition. We will make sure that social housing will become energy efficient, that solar panels are not just for the rich, that electric mobility is for everyone. That makes our houses better insulated, better livable, a better climate, but especially less expenditure on energy. That is doing something for people's pockets. And let's not forget that at the end of the day, that in the last 20 years, where neoliberalism ran rampant in many of our countries, if you compare the improvement in society, people who work hardly had any improvement. People who can live off their capital did extremely well. There is an inherent injustice in this. We need, also on the European level, to fundamentally reform our tax system so that labor is taxed much less and capital is taxed much more. And don't let them fool you by telling you that higher wages lead to higher inflation. The inflation caused in the last couple of years was mainly caused by huge profits in the economy, not by labor costs. Never let them tell you higher labor costs would hurt the economy. It's on the contrary. And by the way, let me end on this. Just give it a bit of thought. If you tax somebody who's a millionaire a bit more, if you put a bit more tax on the profits in the biggest companies, does that change the lives in any way of the people who have profit from that, that they pay more into society? Do they travel less? Do they buy less? Do they live other lives? No. But if on minimum wage you increase people's income, even with a little bit, that changes their lives. They can start spending, they can make better choices, they can make sure their kids have new shoes, they can make sure they can take care of their health care, they can make sure they have a better prospect for their future lives. So don't listen to those who say you can't tax the rich. It's about time they paid their share in our society. And I am inspired by what has happened in Poland, deeply inspired. I'm inspired by a nation that, although the press was almost completely controlled, although the election was free but in no ways fair, still, people said, nope, we don't want to go down that road. We want to be a European nation, we want to be a democratic nation, we want courts to be independent, we want the rule of law, we want people to have individual freedoms, and these need to be protected. And you know who did that? Young people and women. We have young people and women to thank for this turn of history. And how do we make sure that young people and women understand that their future is our biggest concern? By showing it clearly, by showing that we take the climate crisis seriously and that we take steps to face that crisis now, today, tomorrow, every day, as the Spanish government under Pedro Sanchez has been doing for years. That is how we repay the solidarity of our kids. And how do we repay the solidarity for women? By being feminists, by punishing feminicide much harder than we do today, by making sure that gender-based violence is removed from our society, by making sure that women have equal pay, equal opportunities, by making sure that family matters are shared by men and women, and by making sure that all our children have loving families, regardless of the fact whether the parents are a man and a woman, 2 men or 2 women. Every kid deserves a family with loving parents, and their gender is no concern to authorities. Their gender is no concern to anybody but themselves. I find it horrible to hear that in Italy, a mother can be stricken from the register simply because the other parent is also a mother. This is unacceptable to us, and we will fight against this until our last breath. So yes, our fight is about values, our fight is about equality, and our fight is basically always been and will always be about solidarity. Thank you very, very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Franz. Everyone here thinks that it's clear the European Progressive Family is fully behind you. Dear Congress, dear friends, compañeras y compañeros,
dear colleagues,
it is very clear that it is us, our political family, that is pushing from every corner for a better world. Therefore, we take you now from the Netherlands right to the other corner of Europe, as we are joined by a fearless fighter for democracy. I'm talking about the real winner of the presidential elections in Belarus, the voice of the Belarusian citizens who choose democracy and freedom over Ruski Mir, the Russian order. After falsified elections, sentenced to 15 years of imprisonment by the Lukashenko regime, she is the person who represents hundreds of thousands, millions of citizens repeating, "Long live Belarus." It is my pleasure to welcome the President-elect of Belarus, Svetlana Tsikhanouskaya.
So, dear Chairman Joven, dear Pedro Sanchez, dear delegates of PES Congress, friends of democracy and friends of free Belarus, I would like to start today by congratulating the Belarusian Social Democrats with 120 years anniversary. Belarusian Social Democrats were the main power behind Belarusian independence declared than a century ago. Then, they were fighting against tyranny and Russian dominance, and they bravely do today. In this hall, we have representatives of Belarusian Social Democrats of Gramada and Narodная Gramada. Despite political crackdown and arrests of their leaders, these courageous people are not giving up and continue to fight for free Belarus. So let's give them a round of applause. I'm confident that one day Belarusian Social Democrats, along with other political parties from Belarus, will be debating in the European Parliament. I'm confident that one day my country will become a member of free family of European nations. Because without Belarus, Ukraine or Moldova, the European project will be never finished. European Union from Málaga to Minsk, from Lisbon to Tbilisi. Today it might seem like a distant dream, but for us it's not just a dream, it is the goal. Our goal is to build a country where the government serves the people, but not the vice versa. This is why we look up to Europe, where social rights are guaranteed, not just declared. Our goal is to return Belarus to democracy, because under tyranny there are no independent trade unions, no climate awareness, no LGBTQ rights, no gender equality, and of course, no elections. And our goal is to wrest Belarus from Russian claws. We lived for too long in the shadow of Russia, but not anymore. Belarus is not Russia. Belarus is Europe. Dear friends, the path to democracy might be difficult, but it's only the right one. And we can't fight and we can't win this fight alone. We need allies and champions of free Belarus, and many of them are among us. Champions like Prime Minister Sanchez, Minister Jose Alvarez, and Secretary Anna Halul. You stopped collaborating with the illegitimate regime and extended your hands to Belarusian freedom fighters. Thank you. Champions like Joseph Olekas, who made Belarus one of the main topics in the European Parliament. Your resolution on Belarus sent a clear message to the regime that there will not be impunity. Every perpetrator will be brought to justice. Thank you. Champions like Mr. David Lemmy and Mr. Joe Cory Roque, who keep Belarus on the UK's agenda. Thank you as well. Champions like Chancellor Olaf Scholz, who was one of the first German politicians I met back in 2020. And champions like Franz Timmermans, who visited me in Vilnius in the very beginning of my political path and inspired me to continue my fight, whatever it takes. Thank you so much, Franz. And I invite each of you in this hall to become champions. Dear friends, in 2020, PES launched the campaign We Hear You, Belarus. And today, we want to hear from Europe again. Tomorrow, November 12th, join the International Day of Solidarity with Belarus. Because as we speak here, thousands are behind bars. Among them, 4,000 trade union leaders and social democrats. And they must hear that we will not stop fighting until everyone is free. And finally, let's help Ukraine to win this war. Victory of Ukraine will be ultimate defeat of Putin and Lukashenko. You know, many Belarusians fight for Ukrainian freedom as we speak now. Many of them gave their lives in this fight because we, Belarusians, understand that it is not just their fight, it is our common fight for freedom. Thank you. Живи Беларусь!
Queridos amigos, queridas amigas, es el momento de escuchar.
Dear friends, let us now move on with our agenda and let's hear from the next guest. Unfortunately, he was unable to come here, but he did send us a message. He is a strong voice in Europe. He fights every day for a stronger Europe and a better world, a world in peace. He is a true model for the European socialist. It is a pleasure to hear from Josep Borrell, the High Representative. Dear colleagues, let me congratulate Stefan for his re-election as chairman of our party. And let me thank you for allowing me to share a few thoughts with you on the European Union's political or policy on foreign affairs and problems. We have many problems. We're going to have a double test for Europe. First of all, the Ukraine, where the prospects of victory over Russia is not immediate, and where Europeans who have the necessary means for it have to be willing, politically speaking, to help Ukraine, to continue to help Ukraine, and to take on from the U.S., or most likely, when it's most likely its support will decrease. And on Gaza, where a humanitarian tragedy is going on, and where Europe has taken its division to the United Nations. What is happening in Gaza is a consequence of a political and moral failure of the international community. It did not do everything it needed to do 30 years after the Oslo agreements to make the two-state solution a reality. And today, the number of Israeli settlements in occupied territories is 4 times larger than it was 30 years ago. The Palestinian territory has been divided into different areas that are disconnected between them, which makes it much more difficult to carry out the solution of the two states, which we have been repeating over and over that that was the best solution. In Europe, we are very near most of the world's disequilibriums. We are right in the middle of it, whether it is wars, conflicts, inequality, superpopulation, and not here, but in our neighboring countries, and migration, which is a consequence of inequality, superpopulation in many countries that surround us, especially in Africa. And all that creates fear among the European population. And fear is not a good advisor. But this is a very harsh reality that we will have to face in view of the European elections. And I don't need to tell you how important these are. And the eastern border with Europe, well, Putin thought that in just a few weeks he would be in Kiev implementing a puppet state. The conflict in Ukraine is lasting much too long, thanks to the resistance of the Ukraine and the support that we have given it. Otherwise, it could not have defended itself. Yes, and Europe has met its responsibilities. Europe has supported the Ukraine militarily and economically more than the U.S. The Ukraine is a candidate country to join the EU. It can obtain a lot of guarantees of security. We are not a military alliance, so the greatest security guarantee that we can give Ukraine is to allow it to join the European family. But in order to do that, we must remain united and get ready for a longer conflict, longer than Russia thought, a conflict that Russia will never be able to win. But it can delay it because Putin's regime is addicted to war. It needs war. War is an instrument for its political survival, faced with a population that is also suffering. And given the prospects of the U.S. elections, which he thinks could negatively affect the U.S. support to the Ukraine, he believes that democracies are weak. But we cannot prove him right. We have to continue to support Ukraine. And then we have the revolts, the emergency, well, call it as you wish, of whether we like it or not. It's called the Global South, a heterogeneous group of countries which are more and more reluctant to support us in our efforts with Ukraine because they believe that there is a double standard, the famous double standard by Europe in view of what is happening in Gaza and our reaction to it. And that naturally leads me to talk about the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, which is a great strategy of our times for the Israelis and the Palestinians, and also for Europe. But they are responsible for the deaths. It is clear that we must support Israel when attacked by the terrorists. Nothing justifies those attacks. Clearly, we must reject them and condemn them, and we will do so as many times as is necessary. But it is also clear that, as President Obama said in an inspiring text, the way that Israel defends itself, of course, matters. It must respect international and humanitarian law, and it must try to minimize civilian victims. And we must say that cutting off food and electricity and fuels and water to the civilian population which is seized is not acceptable. Because a strategy that ignores human cost at the end will never work, and it will make it impossible to reach peace. Peace is the only guarantee of security for Israel. And it must be possible for progressive people like we are to defend with equal strength the rights of Palestinians to their freedom, to their security and dignity, as much as those of Israelis. And it must be possible to criticize the Israeli government, the government, I say, without for it being accused of being anti-Semitic. Now we must work to achieve a desescalation immediately. And for that, we need to guarantee that the flow of humanitarian aid can reach the people who need it. Because the trucks in the border, there are too many. And their money, there is enough of that, but it needs to get in. We need corridors to access the people. And of course, that the International Red Cross can go in and help the hostages that Hamas has the obligation to release. So we need to minimize the suffering of the civilian population in whichever way it can happen. And we must make it possible for the Israeli hostages to be released, because every single life matters. It is obscene competing for the number of victims. We must be very sensitive. In Gaza, 10,000 victims already. Half of these are children. And once we consolidate a humanitarian ceasefire, or a truce or a pause for humanitarian aid to reach people, we must go from aid to politics, from aid to political action. And the immediate political transition will have to be based, I think, in at least 3 principles. They're mine. We'll have to see, of course, what we agree in the EU. But I think that there are 3 no's and 3 yeses. No to the return of Hamas to Gaza. I was in Gaza in 2008 after the first bombing attacks, and since there have been at least 3 times more bombings. Hamas cannot return to Gaza. No to the reoccupation of Gaza territory by Israel. No to the separating the solution for Gaza to the rest of solutions for the Palestine. Our Arab friends tell us we don't want to talk about the day after, because this it distracts the real problem, which is a solution for the Palestine problem as a whole. And yes, for a provisional authority in Gaza, Palestinian authority in Gaza, defined by a unanimous and non-ambiguous resolution of the Security Council of the UN. We might think of a solution that can be renewed, that can give incentives to both parties to reach an agreement, first of all for Gaza, but also for the West Bank. Yes, to a greater involvement of the Arab states. In some of them, Israel and the Palestinian Authority can trust them for a provisional management of Gaza. And yes, to a greater involvement of the European Union in the region. More specifically, on how to build a Palestinian state, not only how to rebuild Gaza, we've done that several times already, but how to build a peaceful Palestinian state that is able to give back Palestinians their dignity and seal a peace deal with Israel. That must be our commitment and our aim. On the contrary, we will go into a spiral of violence, and repeatedly we will go from funeral to funeral, and our security will be threatened. And that is why we, Europeans, for our own interest, but also for our moral and political responsibility, must commit ourselves more with peace between Israel and Palestine, because that can be a cancer that can metastasize to the rest of the world and create a situation of great instability in the rest of the world. Thank you for your attention.
Rosa,
Bueno, sí. Continuamos el Congreso y vamos a dar paso a
Very well then, with this we proceed to the last panel, the closing panel
de este Congreso y
for
para
this
ello
Congress.
me gustaría llamar a los siguientes ponentes.
I would like
on the stage José Manuel Álvarez, Minister of Foreign Affairs, European Union and Cooperation, Magdalena Andersson, leader of SDP Sweden, Lars Klimber, co-leader of SDP Germany, and David Lammy, Shadow Secretary of State for Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Affairs. Welcome to everyone. Thank you to everyone. And I'm going to ask to my Ministro, buenos días, querido José Manuel.
Dear Minister José Manuel, my question after listening to the video intervention of our High Representative Josep Borrell, we see that Spain is now hosting or willing to host an international peace conference. What is the role that the EU could play in order to achieve sustainable peace in the negotiations? Well, the EU plays a vital responsibility for peace with partners in the Arab world and in Israel. The EU is the only one that can raise the flag of peace every time we find conflict in the Middle East. The EU has clearly condemned the terrorist attacks of Hamas, but violence seems to become daily news in the Middle East, and we see that this should be the last time we call on all sides to stop hostilities and violence. The recipe is clear. It was accepted in Oslo decades ago thanks to Israelis and Palestinians. The recognition of the Palestinian states and the recognition of two states, a Palestinian one and an Israeli one, that coexist in a peaceful manner. This guarantees security for both sides. That would be the goal of that peace conference based on the Oslo agreements. And this is the reason why Spain is asking for humanitarian pauses, humanitarian ceasefire, and the release, the unconditional release of hostages. It would be good for Palestinian civilians, for safety and security in Israel, for stability in the Middle East, for world peace, and for the Arab and Mediterranean cohesion.
Thank you, Minister. Lars, the SPD is a historically renowned internationalist party with strong social democratic values. What are the SPD's main priorities at European and international level facing the challenges of these days?
Thanks for the question, and comrades, I think it's a very strong signal from this Congress that we have a common resolution towards the situation in Israel and solidarity with Israel to give a clear signal about the terror attacks of Hamas, and also to give a clear signal to the civil society in Gaza that we see them, that we want their help, and that we want the pauses for humanitarian aid. But when you ask what is the big aim for Europe, I think the first thing is that we should consider Europe to become a strong international actor. I think this is very important, and this must be the aim of the social democratic family, that Europe is a strong actor on the international level. We hope every day that Joe Biden will win the next US election, but we do not know what will happen. We do not know what will happen next year in the United States, and for that it's so important that the next European Commission has a strong agenda on the field of international politics. And for that, I think the biggest topic is that we make clear every day that Russia will not win this war against Ukraine. that we are strong on the side of Ukraine. And this is one of the biggest topics in Europe and with European politics. That means we have to spend more on defense. That means we have to spend more on military budget, but it also means that we have to see on the diplomatic field. It's not military strains against diplomatic strains, it's both, and we need it on the European level. And let me just quickly add 2 points. We need the enlargement process. Europe has to become a geopolitical actor, and I'm very happy that we say yes to Ukraine, and we say yes to Moldova, but we also have to say yes to the Balkans, and I think it's very important that we have this geopolitical strategy. And the next thing is we have to see other countries. We have to build strategic partnerships to our friends in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America. When I went to Brazil and Chile last year and I talked to our friends there, they told me, China is here, Russia is here, but where are our European friends? And that means we have to become much more stronger in building strategic partnerships with all our friends all over the world.
Thank you, Lars. Dear Magdalena, I'm going to speak in English, sorry, don't worry. Okay. We are living through geopolitical upheaval, but also economy uncertainty, with high inflation and with growth prospects. How can Social Democrats address ordinary people's economic reality and ensure it's not lost in the political debate?
Thank you very much. I mean, it's clear that we are living in difficult times in many respects. I mean, there is a war going on in Europe, and it's absolutely central for our continent and our future that we cannot let Russia win this war. And now, the last month, we also have a war going on in Gaza with a terrible situation for the hostages and for civilians in Gaza. And there are forces in Europe that also wants to use this situation to increase tensions here in Europe. At the same time, we do have an economic situation where households are struggling with the cost of living crisis. High prices on food, on fuel, on gas, on mortgages. We have increased employment and at the same time unemployment, and at the same time increased migration. And at the same time, social media that make profits out of promoting polarizing messages in their algorithms. That makes us angry and afraid. All these things together is a toxic cocktail where right-wing populism can flourish. And also in many of our European countries, there are strong far-right authoritarian parties and movements that already are on the rise. So from this perspective, I think we are in a decisive moment for social democracy and progressives in Europe. And we have to fight every day until the European elections in June. And we have to fight it on our arena to make life better for ordinary people, for better housing, better education, good paying jobs, for secure communities, and actually for a Europe where all our citizens, no matter background, education, what parents we have, if we are a boy or a girl, a man or a woman, that we have the possibility to dream big dreams, to educate ourselves, to develop, to be all that we can be. Because in a Europe, when each and every one of us have this possibility, that will also be a Europe that can prosper and be successful.
David, good to see you here too. So ahead of the next general elections in the UK, what is Labour's vision for UK position in the world?
This has been a very difficult time for the UK because we've had 3 prime ministers in a very short space of time. We had the terrible Boris Johnson that was partying in number 10. We had Liz Truss that broke our economy. And now we've got a very weak Rishi Sunak. So it is my sincere hope that the British people choose Keir Starmer as our new leader at the general election next year. And our vision is to reconnect the United Kingdom with the global community once again. You will never, ever find a Labour Prime Minister describe the European Union as our enemies. They are our friends, and we can't wait to rebuild relations once again. It was a mistake for this government to cut our aid budget, to hoard our vaccine, and we want to rebuild bridges with the global south once again. And of course, I'm very conscious that we are here at this time of war in Europe. We will stand shoulder to shoulder with the people of Ukraine in their fight, and they must win. And at this terrible moment in the Middle East, yes, we stand against the horrendous terrorism that we saw on October the 7th, and we support Israel's right to defend itself. But our party has always been dedicated to the just cause that is the Palestinian people, and we want to see that two-state recognition, and we want to work with others to see the recognition of the Palestinian state in the years ahead. So it is our responsibility to reconnect the UK with the global community, and I hope and pray that we get the privilege to serve once again in May or October, I suspect, next year. Thank you.
David. Mr. Alvarez, so the Spanish presidency of the European Council has put forward very ambitious proposals, also for the renewed relationships with Latin America. What do you see as Spain's biggest accomplishments in the international sphere during the presidency you just served?
Started our presidency thinking that since the war of aggression of Russia to Ukraine, Europe could not stay anymore thinking about itself. We needed friends, partners, the same friends and partners that share our values in the world. And that if we wanted to tackle the global changes, starting by the fight of climate change, we needed to work with those that share the same concern, the same values. And Latin America and the Caribbean appear very high in the agenda, not only because they share our languages, not only because a part of the population in Latin America has European origins and more Latino people live in our countries, but because they share our values. They believe in multilateralism, they believe in peace, they believe in United Nations, in human rights, in the fight against climate change. So very soon in our presidency, we did, after 8 years, a summit, EU, Latin America and the Caribbean, EU-CELAC. And this is before and after the Spanish presidency. President Lula of Brazil, leaving that summit, said, "I have never seen Europe to care so much for Latin America as during that summit." We have a structure, a new dialogue, and every 2 years there will be a summit. We have mobilized 45,000 million euros for investment in Latin America, and we are fostering agreements as the Mercosur agreement, that is the last chance to make sure that Brazil and the rest of Mercosur will be under the Paris Agreement. But of course, we are also thinking about our near partners. And they are the Balkans, Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia. Very recently, we have seen the opinion of the Commission giving them green light to start the discussion for enlargement. This is going to be a very important part of the final stage of our presidency. And being a Mediterranean country and given the situation in the Middle East, to renew, to relaunch, to restart the Euro-Mediterranean dialogue and the Euro-Arab dialogue, it's also one of the big highlights. And in Barcelona, here in Spain, November 27, we have a very important meetings for Europe and also for the Arab countries and Israel. That is the Union for the Mediterranean meeting. It's going to be a great opportunity to start to discuss the next day after violence will stop in the Middle East. So Latin America, Balkans, and the countries that are in the enlargement process and the Euro-Mediterranean and Euro-Arab dialogue are the big highlights of our presidency.
Thank you. Muchas gracias, Ministro.
Thank you very much.
With a government coalition led by Social Democrats, Germany is once again putting forward a progressive agenda based on the values of respect, solidarity, and equality. Could you share with us some of the key achievements of the current government?
Yes, thank you. And I think what we do as Social Democrats in Germany, it's also important for the next year European election. And let me just mention 4 points that I think that are very important if you have a social democratic government. The first point is we have to see the challenges of people in their all-day life. This must be the main focus of politics of Social Democrats. That means housing, energy prices, inflation. It also means good jobs. And I remember when I was the campaign manager of Olaf Scholz and we presented the first posters of the campaign, and there was this 12 euro minimum wage. And all the journalists in Berlin said, oh, this is such a boring politics, because we know about all the debates about minimum wage. And let me say that very clear. For a social democrat, it's never boring if you have a position that will better the life of 7 million people in Germany. And we have to be very clear about that as European social democrats. And the second point where we must be very clear is that it's not climate against industry. It's both. It's climate and industry together. We can create a lot of new jobs if we do the right climate policy. It's innovation, it's new technologies, and this is how we should focus on climate policy, bringing new jobs to our countries. The third point is no cultural wars. I mean, I just came back from the United States, and if you see the election campaigns there, it's about cultural wars. And every time we have cultural wars in the election campaign about eating meat, about going to an airplane, about using the car, about how to speak and how to live, we will always lose as Social Democrats. It's much more better to focus on the all-day challenges people have. And the last point I want to mention, we need power. And I think Pedro gave a strong speech about that this morning. We have the right program, but we also need power as Social Democrats. That's the reason why we're happy to govern in Germany. That's the reason why we're happy that Pedro will be re-elected again. We hope that our comrades in UK will get in power. We hope that Frans Timmermans will become the next Prime Minister of the Netherlands. But we have to become the strongest party with the European elections, dear comrades. This must be the aim, and then we can fulfill our program.
Well, Magdalena, at the moment not really in power, but still the most popular party in Sweden. What are SAP's proposals to combat the rise of extreme right in the world? Can you share some best practices with us?
Thank you very much. Let me just start by briefly saying something about the situation in Sweden. I mean, since elections last year, our second largest party in parliament is the Sweden Democrats, which is a far-right, nationalistic, authoritarian party founded by neo-Nazis. They're not part of the government, but they are the largest party in the government coalition. And by 1 year in this period, most Swedes consider them as as the party actually ruling our country, and I think that is also correct. And what we see after a year is that the hopes that the traditional rights had, that they could actually control this movement, that once they started cooperating with them, they would be controlled. Unfortunately, we see the other way around. It is the traditional conservative parties that are aligning with the Sweden Democrats. They are moving in their direction. And with all the confidence of being the second largest party, the Sweden Democrats are by now doing everything they can to threaten and silence critical voices in civil society, in culture, in academia, in our independent authorities. They want to silence opposition by specifically cutting the Social Democrats' financing, and they are attacking the trade unions. The only thing they're not doing, according to Viktor Orban's handbook so far, is attacking our judicial system. So if you want to see an example of how quickly things can deteriorate, you are welcome to come to Sweden. And what we should really look into is the risk that conservatives on the European level will go in the Swedish direction. That would not be good for Europe, and therefore also this election is so important in June. What is the best way to fight the right wing? I think what Lars was saying is so important. We have to not get into the culture wars. I mean, they are trying to trigger us all the time, every day, with different kind of stupid proposals, just in order for us to go into that trap and fight a culture war. But that's the scene for the far right. We have to be those boring, traditional social democrats, talking about, just as you said, good wages, good housing, good education for our children, a good life for all citizens in our countries and in Europe. I think that's the best way forward, to beat them on the right-left arena of economic policy.
Thank you, Madalena.
Gracias, Madalena.
David, we are finishing this panel, and I'd like to ask you, how can progressive from Europe and the world increase their cooperation on advancing progressive policies?
There is so much that progressives here in Europe can do. I think the first thing that we must do in this cost of living crisis that's facing so many people is that we must reject the trickle-down economics of people like Liz Truss and Boris Johnson. It doesn't work for ordinary people. We've got to have proper industrial policy, and we hope to gain power so we can invest in a new British company, GB Energy, to bring down the costs for ordinary people. We need to get back to investing in health once again. The future of Europe is dependent on all of our young people. I think, as Lars suggested, we've got to resist this culture war that they want to drive us into. Ours is not the politics of division, it's the politics of unity. And it's hugely important that we continue to invest in our democracies, because what we see from the populists is a rolling back of notions that we considered to be normal, challenging the judiciary, causing problems with our public broadcasters, really challenging the norms that we in Europe have built for so many years, and we see this, of course, in Sweden. So solidarity at this time is important, a renewal of our democratic institutions, investment in our health service, investment in our education, and to be absolutely square and centre, that we are back to a politics. Someone once said, it's the economy, stupid, that matters. We have to be there with ordinary people in a cost of living crisis.
Thank you, David, and thank you, all of you,
And thank you really for sharing your value time and also your value idea. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's you, no?
Yes. I don't know what is Giacomo.
Maybe behind the scene. We're missing the Secretary General.
Giacomo. I don't know. I don't know. Because he has to make the closing part.
Is it on? Yes. Dear friends, sorry we had some technical problems. Another 2 minutes and we will hear from our president for some closing words. Just a few minutes of your patience, please. Yeah. Yes. Okay, friends. Just like life, sometimes we have some technical hiccups. But we are about to close our very successful Congress here in the beautiful Málaga with the beautiful weather. And to guide us to the next phase until the European elections, I would like to introduce our former and new PES president, Stefan Löfven.
Dear delegates, prime ministers, party leaders, PSOE members, activists, dear friends. So we are now getting to the end of our second day of our PES Congress, and I would like to first thank you so much again for the trust that you have once again placed in me. I thank you for working so tirelessly for the interest of the people, and I thank you for being the essence of the PES family. We are united and we have a vision for Europe, and that makes me truly proud to be PES president. Today, now I would like to end up with speaking in particular about three issues. The first, solidarity as the DNA of our political family. Second, our struggle, fight against the far right. And third, about the work to protect and empower people, not least visualized by PSOE and Pedro Sanchez. Comrades, in times of uncertainty, it is our duty to respond to the concerns of the people with solutions that makes a real difference. Our movement was born out of the determination of brave women and men who refused to accept the existing state of affairs. Frustrated by injustice and inequality of their times, our founders sought to build a better society for all, a good society for all. Now, their willingness to work for everyone without prejudice, to stand up for the most vulnerable, and to support the middle classes is also what drives us today. Throughout the years, socialism has shown that when united, people really have the power to dream, to rule, and to wrestle the world from fools, as musician and poet laureate Patti Smith continues to sing. Today we are living in a time of growing instability and inequality, times of resurgent armed conflicts, climate crisis, generational divides, rising despots, And our answer to this must be the one we have always given. Our answer is solidarity. It is about standing together, treating everyone fairly, and ensuring also that people can express themselves without fear. It is a bedrock of a just, equal, and free society. Solidarity, my dear friends, is a two-way street. It's important that we know that when we help the collective, we are also helping ourselves. And as long as society continues to value these principles, social democracy will forever be that bright red rose that continues to bloom. This, dear friends, is the essence of our DNA. But for us, solidarity is even beyond an issue of values. It's also about delivering real-life solutions. Fighting for better work conditions is not about winners and losers. It's about dignity for all. When one worker is respected, all are respected. Fighting poverty is not a distant dream. It's about common human decency. When one rises, we all rise. Closing gender gap. Women empowerment is not a simple trend, it's a progress. When women succeed, we all succeed. Achieving climate neutrality is not a fantasy. It is our responsibility to make the world a cleaner place. And when one works for a healthy planet, the whole planet benefits. Working for a fairer distribution of wealth is not about more rhetoric, it's about fairness. Taxing the ultra-rich benefits the many, not the few. Housing is not a privilege, it's a right. Let's make it affordable for all. And finally, for us, protecting democracy is not just an option. It is about protecting the most important element of political progress. Our unity in defending democracy benefits us, our children, and generations to come. So, dear comrades, solidarity for the individual is really solidarity for all, and it is what unites us in our daily work as socialists and democrats. Our project is about building a society that serves every citizen, where everyone is safe, healthy, and valued. A society where everyone is empowered, regardless of gender, background, age, or sexual orientation. That is why we firmly believe that the European Union is the most important political project our continent has ever undertaken. It's a project born out of the ashes of war, a project of peace. This was demonstrated when the COVID-19 struck. Thanks in large part to socialists and social democrats, the EU not only acted quickly with the Recovery EU program, but also played a crucial role in ensuring that workers kept their jobs through the SURE instrument, that the population had widespread access to vaccines, and that the different health systems held on. At the same time, this crisis clearly underlined the need for greater investments to support those systems, both within the EU but also globally. The EU's contribution to global vaccine solidarity was key, and we can be very proud of this achievement. European solidarity was again demonstrated this year as major wildfires spread across countries, Spain, Portugal, Greece. The EU mobilized its civil protection mechanism to help countries in need. And I can assure you, in Sweden, we will never forget the help we got from EU in 2018 when our forest was burning. European solidarity also transcends our borders. When Russia's war of aggression in Ukraine began, we stood firmly behind Ukraine and its people, supporting the country's military efforts, its economy and future reconstruction. Ukrainians have the right to live in peace and security and the right to defend themselves against Russian aggression, and the PES family pushed for the activation of the temporary protection mechanism to respond to the millions of people that had to flee Ukraine, entering EU countries in search of peace and shelter. So for us, the European Union is the embodiment of our principle of solidarity. It is our duty as progressives to lead the way with bold, progressive solutions to the world's challenges based on this very key principle. It is now time to promote this principle of solidarity within the European Union and far beyond our borders. So, comrades, multilateralism has never been more important than now. Building on the international nature of our movement, progressives must continue to support the global rules-based order that emerged after the Second World War, built around the United Nations. The European Union must play a central role supporting the United Nations. I am reminded of the words of the American poet William Stafford when he wrote this: "The wars we haven't had saved many lives." But unfortunately today, war and conflict are again upon people in our neighborhood. Next year, the United Nations will host the Summit of the Future, where UN member states will be called to decide on measures that will deliver more equitable and official global governance system. The scale of today's challenges is global, so that it is vital to strengthen cooperation between nations and the United Nations. We must support this in cooperation with all our like-minded partners. The war in Ukraine, the terrorist attacks on Hamas on the 7th of October, and the suffering of countless Palestinian civilians today are all stark reminders of exactly that. Israelis and Palestinians have both a right to peace and security and a right to self-determination, and we don't take side for one or the other against. The PES position is very clear. We take side for values. We stand against barbarism. We stand against terrorism, against violence, against attacks on civilians. We stand for the UN Charter, for human rights, international law, and humanitarian law. We stand for Israel and Palestine. These principles are not negotiable, and there should be no exceptions. Dear friends, political and economic instability is often the root of widespread poverty, war, and conflict. And the most vulnerable sections of our societies are always the first to feel the effects. As a result, millions of migrants and refugees are forced to leave their countries in search for a better life. Migration has existed for as long as humanity has. And the right to seek asylum is a legal right, and it is also a moral duty. Now, the rhetoric of the right-wing nationalists that they will stop them is nothing but a demagogic trick to win votes. It is destined to fail, depriving those that are in real need of international protection from this right. So when it comes to asylum and migration, we must manage and organize it with a good, progressive framework in place. We must build trust and cooperate with like-minded partners worldwide. We must promote efficient inclusion policies. This is a way to make it a win for our societies, a win for the migrants, a win for those in protection. This is a way our family is proposing and implementing in Europe, not the way the far-right government in Italy tries to follow by outsourcing and sending asylum seekers to Albania. What we need to do is to stop the illegal human trafficking, have well-managed legal avenues. What we need is to act in full cooperation with the African Union, with the United Nations, and with other international partners. What we need is to act on the base of the respect of human rights and also matching the needs and capacity of each member state. We must continue to push for a coordinated European asylum and migration policy, so the final adoption of the Pact on Migration and Asylum, based on a fair, safe, sustainable and predictable approach, is essential to actually be able to protect the individual rights of asylum seekers and also the solidarity between member states. We must continue working towards the conclusion of the pact. In almost every aspect of politics, international cooperation is key. So we need to enhance mutual beneficial cooperation with third countries to ensure that human rights are respected. We must be unwavering in our support for the Global South, maintaining robust diplomatic ties and providing both financial as well as humanitarian aid. We must empower people and secure the conditions that will allow them the opportunity of a good life at home, the opportunities of a future, the real opportunities, so that people are not driven to make the dangerous journey across desert and overseas in search for a better life. And here too, our answer, our path, is a path of solidarity. What is good for the Global South is good for us. Let us firmly assert that what benefits one benefits us all. What benefits Ukraine strengthens Europe. The welfare of migrants and refugees reflects the strength of our entire society, and the prosperity of Global South is intricately tied to Europe's and world's prosperity. As progressives, my friend, it is our role as to lead the change in making this vision a reality. But dear friends, we also face a very dark opposition. Right now, the rights of women, the LGBTI community, multilateralism, migrants, asylum seekers and refugees are under attack from the far-right movements. The rule of law is being undermined and democracy has been weakened by constant violations of fundamental rights in the EU, led by regressive governments. We now see growing support for the far right from the traditional right, which has contributed massively to its normalization in the political landscape and the spread of regressive ideas in our societies. We condemn this rapprochement in the strongest terms. Our message to EPP and ALDE parties that make deals with the far right is quite simple. You cannot be pro-European and democratic at the same time making deals with parties that are fundamentally anti-EU and are autocratic. It doesn't work. People know the danger of such alliances, and that is why here in Spain, citizens sent a clear message to the PP and the far-right party Vox by placing their trust in PSOE. And in this regard, I echo Pedro's call for European socialists and democrats to be the bulwark of European values. And as Olof Palme once said, for us, democracy is a question of human dignity, and I couldn't agree more. That is why it is crucial that we reaffirm that citizens' rights and freedom are not negotiable, that Europe's democracy is not for sale. So let us be very clear. Socialists and Democrats will always be against the far right and what they stand for. We will always fight against the normalization of the extreme right. Socialists and Democrats will always exclude extreme right-wing parties from any political majority, and we are against them because for us, all people are equal, all people have equal rights. It is that simple. So we are, dear friends, at the right place at the right time to convey this message. What PSOE and Pedro Sanchez achieved this summer shows that social democratic ideas are still relevant for millions and millions of people. And as Pablo Iglesias Posse, founder of PSOE, famously said, socialists don't die, they are sown. So socialists in Spain have proven this once again. With Pedro Sanchez, PSOE has sown the seeds of hope against the far right. And today, we are proudly looking forward to have socialists at the head of the new progressive government here in Spain very, very soon. The Spanish people have spoken clearly, and in a few weeks, the people of Netherlands will give the same message and put Frans Timmermans as the Prime Minister in Netherlands. People have chosen progress over regression. They've chosen the political force that protects the people. And that is because PSOE is a party of gender equality, social progress and democracy, the party of shared prosperity, the party of Europe. And we couldn't be prouder of having such an historical party within our ranks and also hosting this Congress. May this not only be a source of pride, but also motivation and inspiration for what is to come. Today, we'll once again celebrate social democratic ideals, our vision for the future. We had here with us, this Congress, so many leaders of our political family. Pedro, Olaf, Marcel, Robert, Irache, Franz, Eli, Lars, Magdalena, Paul, Ivana, Mette, Nikos, Olivier, Pedza, and so many others. With such a lineup, my friends, I'm sure that we will be inspired and strengthened for what is to come. Compañeros y compañeros, as we prepare for the next European election in 2024, it is time to stand up. To stand up for democracy, the rule of law and fundamental rights, for the Green Deal and a just transition that protects citizens' well-being, for quality jobs and an economy made for the people. It's time to stand up for the rights of women and girls, for the rights of the LGBTI community, for European and international solidarity. It is time to stand up for a European Union in the lead with progressive solutions to global challenges. Our next appointment will be the PES Electoral Congress in Rome early next year. I look forward to seeing you there. We are now, dear friends, standing together in the fight for a future of justice and equality, and together we will win the 2024 European elections. Adelante, Europa! Adelante, socialismo! Adelante, socialdemocracia! Thank you.
Una mattina mi sto svegliato. Oh bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Una mattina mi sto svegliato e ho trovato l'invasore. Oh partigiano, portami via. Oh bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Partigiano, portami via, perché mi sento di morire. E se muoio da partigiano, oh bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Se io muoio da partigiano, e tu mi devi seppellire lassù in montagna.